Good afternoon, everyone. I am Professor Rishipal from Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, Haryana. I am Chairperson, Department of Behavioral Sciences, Dean Pedagogy and Capacity Building, and I am Professor of Pedagogy. And in this session, we will try to understand how the research objectives and hypotheses can be finalized for conduction of the research. In the last session, we were talking about identification of the research problem. Once the research problem has been identified, then the next step in that is to finalize the objective and hypothesis. Rather, I will say that at the time of finalization of research problem itself, we must keep in our mind that as a result of finalization of a particular topic or a particular statement of research, or as a result of identification of research question, what objectives and hypotheses can be developed or can be finalized with the help of that research problem. So it is research problem itself which will help us to finalize the objective and hypothesis of a research. And to do that, let us first try to understand what is research objective. And I think all we understand what is research. Research is basically creation of new knowledge to address a problem, to address an issue, or to address a challenge, or to solve a problem is research. Research objective, what objective, what aim we are going to attain as a result of conduction of research. If we take example of research conducted for finding out the reason for spread of malaria, then Ronald Rose conducted the research and the objective was to find out the reason behind spread of malaria, and as a result of conduction of his research, he could conclude that it is a mosquito, and the mosquito named as the Anopheles female mosquito, which is responsible. So objective was to find out the reason for the spread of malaria, and that objective was achieved. Similarly, if we want to conduct a research in social sciences, research in any domain area, research in management, humanities, even in literature, there should be some objective, and that objective should be well mapped and weighted with the problem, research problem. So research objectives are the statement. Yes, the objectives are statement, and these statements are drawn or finalized to describe the basic purpose of research. Students, I want to clarify the difference between the objective and the purpose. Objective is we can fix anything as objective for conduction of the research. Purpose means how the accomplishment or attainment of objectives will help the humanity in solution of its problem. That is purpose, and it can be best understood with the help of an example. Suppose an agriculture scientist want to conduct a research, and that research is related to the impact of chemical fertilizer on the health of people, and this research is being conducted jointly by the team of agriculture scientists and health experts. And for that, objective is to find out the relationship of contaminated chemical based fertilizers on the food grains or food items, resulting or putting its impact on the health of people. the objective as well as purpose are very much clear. If the objective of research is not serving any purpose, or in other words, if we try to understand the research is to create the new knowledge. If there is no utility of created new knowledge, then the objective of research is not achieved. So basically, objective describes the purpose of the research, or in other words, research objectives are declaration. These are the declarations given by the researcher why this research is being conducted, what is aim, what is purpose of conduction of this research. Those declarations will become the objective of research. In other words, also, research objective explains what new knowledge will be created and how it will solve the problem. The objective will help us to understand what new knowledge will be created, and then this newly created knowledge will help us to solve the problem. So this is research objective. Now, why we should have objective in the research, or what is need for involving the objective in the research? If we will have no objective, it is not only related to the research. We can take example of any of human activity. If any of human activity accomplished without objective, it is a futile exercise. And especially in the present time, if we are doing anything without any objective, doing something means utilization of resources, utilization of time, utilization of effort, energy, and all these things are not employable. And when you are using them without any purpose, without any objective, then it is really not appropriate. So need of objective is very first. Objectives are developed to know what we want to achieve as a result of conduction of research. Then second one is to give direction to the research. If we will not have objectives in the research, then what we will do? Basically, objectives helps us to give direction what we should do for conduction of the research, what activities we have to perform, what data we have to collect. All that will be decided by the objectives only. And the next need for fixing or for deciding the objectives is research objectives are controlling mechanism for type of deviation from the scope of research. Suppose we are conducting the research. What will be controlling mechanism which will keep us on the track of conduction of the research? And it is objective only. Whenever we will try to deviate from the path of research conduction, our objective will bring us back. Or in other words, we can understand that if we are in dilemma, if we are confused whether the activities accomplished by us are in the direction of achievement of our research goal or not, then the best purpose or the best strategy is go back to your objectives and try to map the activity which you are doing with your objectives. If your activities are well aligned in the direction of achievement of your objectives and goals of your research, it means you are doing right. If your activities, if your research is not mapped with your objectives, then immediately come back and take your objective into consideration, and accordingly you run your research process. The next one is the research objective helps in deciding the research methods. For conduction of a research, it is necessary to finalize the research method. And research method means what kind of research design or structure will be necessary for the conduction of research, or how we have to collect the data, by using what methodology we have to collect the data, and how much size sample is necessary for conduction of the research, and then what tools, what equipment, what instrument, or what gadgets we should use to collect data or to accomplish the objectives of research. We need to finalize all that, and this can be finalized with the help of objective only. Not only that, after collection of the data, if we want to analyze the data, that data analysis is possible with the help of different statistical techniques. So which statistical technique will be helpful in conduction of research decided by us? That can be finalized with the help of understanding the objectives. Suppose we want to explain, we want to understand some concept. It is a descriptive type of research, and by using that method, if we want to understand some concept, then in that case, what type of statistics, whether the descriptive statistics or the inferential statistics is appropriate for analysis of data, that will be decided with the help of the research objective only. So this is also one of the need for research objective. And the last objective in research and need for research conduction is to support in deciding the sampling technique, method of data collection, which we have already discussed. Now, what should be the characteristic? Characteristics means what type of objective we should include in our research, and for that there is one acronym, and the acronym is SMART. And SMART means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. Our research objective should be specific. Specific means, in the forthcoming slides, I will explain the major or the journal objectives and specific objective. Specific objective means every specific objective will be included in the research for accomplishment of a specific goal of the research. So the objective designed and framed should be specific in that nature. Each and every objective decided by the researcher should accomplish some specific task to attain the goal. Second one is measurable. M for measurable. Measurable means our objectives should be measurable. Better if we can go quantitative. Reason being, if we will go quantitative, then application of statistical techniques will be very easy. And if we shall be using the statistical techniques, then interpretation of data will become more logical and scientific in manner. So our objective should be measurable in nature. And yes, of course, the objective should be attainable. We can take example. Suppose I want to conduct a research whether a ghost in this room is present or not. So with the help of existing technology, yes, we have technology which can help us to locate or to find out the concentration of energy. And with the help of that, it can be established. But actually, if we see, then whatever technology is available, whatever knowledge is available on this earth, with the help of that, we cannot attain the objective of a research where we want to establish that a ghost is present in this room. So this is not attainable. And this is not only for that kind of research only. Even certain researches which are feasible in nature but not attainable. Feasible means, suppose we want to understand the behavior of human being on moon, and we have shortage of funds, and government has not supported us in our research, then the objective of research is not attainable. Otherwise it is feasible. If it is financially and otherwise supported by the technology, then it is attainable. Your objective should be realistic in nature. Realistic means it should be related to the fact. It should not be vague and fake in the nature. It should be based on systematic and scientific method. So your research objective should be realistic. And the last is T for time bound, means whatever objective you will finalize or frame for conduction of your research, in that case you have to fix a timeline, or you have to finalize that within this duration of time it would be possible to conclude the research, or to finalize the research, or to complete the research. So this the objective of research should be time bound. And besides that, this research objective must attain some purpose. Research objective must answer to the research problems. Research objective must organize the research. It is research objectives which will help you how you have to organize and execute your research. Basically, identification of research problem, preparation of plan of your research by including the objective hypothesis, by including the research methodology, and by including other elements, and by deciding the procedure. The complete blueprint of your research is available with you, and with this available blueprint you have to organize and execute your research. Execution means whatever plan for research you have prepared on the research problem and on the decided objective and hypothesis of research, you will organize your research. And once after organization and execution of your research, the next step is collection of the data, and the data collected will be converted into the results and finding by using different statistical tools and techniques. And this analyzed and interpreted meaningful data is to be converted into the results and findings. So your objective should help you to organize your results. Organize means how your results will be presented, how your result will be described, and then how your findings will be interpreted. The organization of that should reflect among your research objectives. Now, once you have all that background in your mind, the next step in finalization of your research objective and hypothesis is how to convert your research problem. In the last session, we were talking about research problem, and after understanding the process of identification of research problem, that problem needs to be converted into the research question, the topic of research, and with the help of topic of research we need to convert it into the research objectives. So what kind of research objectives? There can be two type of research objective: the general or major research objectives, general and major objective, and second are the specific objective. So let us understand what are the general or the major objectives, and what can be the specific objective related to research. And if we try to understand the general or major objectives, then friends, I want to explain whatever research problem statement you have finalized, whatever research question you have framed from the research problem identified, and lastly whatever topic you have finalized. With the help of that topic, the general major objective of research can be framed, and this is to attain the major aim and purpose of your study, or in other words, what is major objective of your research. And this can be understood with the help of an example given is to study the impact of poor mental health. If people have poor mental health, then what will be its impact on the performance? And I have taken example of students from senior secondary school. So the example of research is to find out the impact of poor mental health on the performance of the secondary school students. We want to find out the impact of their mental health on their performance. So this is major. This can be converted into the research topic also. The research topic will be impact of poor mental health on the performance of secondary school students. That can be the topic of your research, but the major objective is to find out the impact of poor mental health. And if you want to describe it in the format of research question, then it can be written as what will be the impact of poor mental health on the performance of secondary school student. So I have described all the three things. Number one, I described how a research problem can be converted into a research question, and how a research question can be converted into a research topic, and how a research topic can be converted into a major research objective. With this example, it is clear. Now moving to the next, that is specific objective of research. In the specific objective of research, it is process of framing the objectives by breaking up the journal or major objective into the subparts. Or we can say, whenever the topic of research, or whenever the problem of research, major problem of research, is broken up into subparts, these subparts can be converted into the specific objective. And how it can be done? It can be understood with the help of an example. And example is, let us go back to the last slide. And the slide was to study the impact of poor mental health on the performance of secondary school student. That was major or general topic. And now we have to convert that major and general topic into the specific objectives. And the specific objectives are, very first one is to examine the status of poor mental health among secondary school students. Is it possible to achieve the general topic without assessing the status of poor mental health? So one objective, one subpart of major objective can be the status of poor mental health among secondary school students. We can find out or examine that status. This can be one subpart of conduction of the general research. Second subpart is to find out the effect of poor mental health on the academic performance. First, we try to examine the status of mental health among students, and as a result of that, we got their mental health status. Now the mental health status of student is available with us. Now our next step is to find out the effect of poor mental health on academic performance. If parallelly, we will also evaluate and assess the academic performance of these students, and we will try to find out the relationship between that. This can be our second objective. So with the help of one major objective, so far we have developed two sub objective or specific minor objectives. Third objective can be to compare the impact of poor mental health on academic performance of male and female secondary school students. Now, third objective or third specific or minor objective can be, we can compare. In the first objective, we could find out the status of mental health of students. In the second objective, we try to find out the relationship between their mental state or their mental health status and academic performance. And now in this third specific minor objective, we are comparing the mental health status of the male and female with respect to their academic performance. This can be the third specific minor objective. And last objective, last doesn't mean that we can develop only this much of the objective. We can develop number of objective from a major research objective. And the last one is to find out the relationship between poor mental health and age of the student. We can find out if age is increasing and the status of poor mental health is given, then what is relationship between these two variables, between these two factors? So four sub objective or specific minor objective can be developed with the help of a measure. So it will depend upon your size, nature, and type of research, how many sub or how many specific objective you should develop. Suppose you want to conduct PhD research, then in that case, yes, necessarily you must have minimum 5 to 6 specific minor objectives with one major objective. In case of research to be conducted for MPhil dissertation, then in that case we can go for maximum 3 to 4 objective or 2 to 3 objective. In case of writing a research paper, then objective can be 2 to 3 objectives, sub-objectives. So by this way, we can convert a research problem into a research question into a research topic, a research topic into a major research objective, and a major research objective can be broken up into the number of specific minor objectives, and all these specific minor objective will help us to attain the major objective. That should be kept in mind. Now, before I go for the research hypothesis, even it was explained in the previous session when we were discussing about identification of research problem, what are different research variables. But because in understanding the hypothesis, understanding of research variables is at most important. So I will again explain briefly the research variable. Research variable we can understand very well if we want to understand the cause and effect relationship, the status or the relationship between two factors. Students, whenever we have taken any factor for the research conduction, these factors will become the variables. How we can understand? Let us go back to the objectives. In the major objective, the variables are poor mental health and performance. And that performance may be physical performance, academic performance. When I was explaining how we can break up a major research objective into minor, then with the help of performance itself, we can develop number of objectives. And when we are developing the objective now, then each objective will have certain factors, and these factors are the basically variable. Whenever a factor taken into research will become a variable. So if we take example of the major objective, in that impact of poor mental health on the performance of secondary school education, here the poor mental health is the independent variable and the performance of secondary school student is the dependent variable. So variable is something which varies with respect to some other factor, the quality of diet and the quality of health. If we will manipulate the quality of diet, the quality of health will also change. So both the quality of diet and quality of health are the factors which have been taken into research conduction, and these factors will become the variables. So variable is anything which varies with respect to some other factor, and in research, at major level, we have four different type of variables: the independent variable, dependent variable, extraneous variable, and yes, of course, sometimes we have confounded relationship or a variable. Now, what is independent variable? Independent variable is a variable which will be manipulated by the researcher to study its impact, or to study the impact of its manipulation on some other variable, and that other variable is dependent variable. How it can be understood? Let us go back to the specific objectives. In the specific objectives, we have taken one of the objective to find out the effect of poor mental health on the academic performance of the secondary school students. So in this, the poor mental health is the independent variable, and study of its impact on academic performance. If the mental health is very good, what will be the level of academic performance? If mental health is poor, then what will be its impact on academic performance? Here, the independent variable, the manipulating, or the variable which will change with the choice of researcher, is the poor mental health, and it is independent variable. And the study of its impact on academic performance is the dependent variable. In nutshell, or in brief, independent variable is the variable which will be manipulated by the researcher to study its impact on some other variable. Now, the dependent variable is the variable which will be affected by the research, which will be affected by the independent variable, and its impact will be studied. So that is dependent variable. Now, there is third variable, which is extraneous variable. Now, what is extraneous variable? Let us take example of an agricultural research. Suppose I want to study the impact of good quality seed and the yield of the crop. So my study is, I will take good quality of seed, and what is outcome of that in the form of the production of crop. So these are two factors, and these factors are: one, quality of seed is the independent variable, and the yield of crop is the dependent variable. But is it the quality of seed only which can have impact on the yield of the crop production, or there are some other factors? Yes, of course, there are some other factors also, and among them are the fertilizer, the climatic condition, the quality of soil, and yes, your use of pesticides and insecticides. All these factors will certainly put impact on the production or yield of the crop. I want to conduct the study by taking good quality seed, and I want to understand its impact on the yield or production of the crop. But if I will not control the impact of fertilizer, the impact of soil, the impact of climatic condition, the impact of use of pesticides and insecticides, it will not be possible to find out the exact impact of quality of seed on the production. So extraneous variables are the variables which will have similar impact on dependent variable. What kind of impact is being put by the independent variable on the dependent variable? We can understand with the help of another example. We have taken one example, quality of diet and quality of health. So it is not only the quality of diet which will have impact on quality of health, exercise, sound sleep, genetical and biological factors are also there which can have impact on. So all these additional factors are the extraneous variables. Now, concluding to the extraneous variables, why we should talk about the extraneous variable? If you want to conduct the study, if you want to find out the exact impact or exact relationship between two or more than two variables, then such kind of variables which will have similar impact on the dependent variable, or in other words, the extraneous variables should be controlled. So without controlling the extraneous variable, it is not possible to study the exact impact of independent variable on dependent variable. Now the last one is confounded relationship or confounded variable. So confounded variable means there are certain extraneous variables which can be controlled, but there are extraneous variables on which the researcher has no control and it is not possible to control them. So the extraneous variables which cannot be controlled as an effort of researcher in the conduction of research, these variables are confounded variables, or this kind of relationship is known as confounded relationship. So now we have understood that, and we want to move further. And as we decided in the beginning that we will discuss about framing the objective and hypothesis of research, and already we have discussed the objective part and we have understood the variables. Now it is turn for the research hypothesis. So let us try to understand the hypothesis. Basically, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is an assumption or presumption made by researcher as solution of the problem. When we were discussing about research problem identification, we were emphasizing that we have to identify such a problem which has not been solved anywhere. If we have taken such a problem into consideration, then how it can be solved? So researcher will suggest, researcher will presume, researcher will take assumption that what could be the tentative solution of the identified problem. That tentative solution assumed or presumed by the researcher as solution of problem is known as hypothesis. So if we go through the definition given on your screen, a research hypothesis is a specific, clear and testable proposition. Yes, of course, it should be testable, because it is testing of hypothesis only will help us to establish the finding, or it should be predictive in nature. Every hypothesis is a prediction. If we take example of COVID-19, when this problem happened for the first time, we have not been having any treatment, any chemical, any strategy, any pathy or any vaccine for the treatment. And then it was presumption or assumption of, or it was prediction of the scientist, medical scientist, that some vaccine can be helpful in the control of this COVID-19. And taking that presumption, or that presumption was predictive, it was a kind of prediction that it can be some vaccine which can control the COVID-19, and taking that prediction, we could develop the vaccine which is available in the market. And yes, of course, that has controlled the COVID. Initially it was a prediction, now it is a finding. So what I mean to say, hypothesis, if established, will become finding. If not established, it means some alternative finding, right? So the hypothesis is specific, clear and testable proposition or predictive statement about the possible outcome of a scientific research as a result of conduction of scientific research, what could be the prediction? And that prediction has to be given by the researcher in the form of a specific and clear and testable manner. So this is research hypothesis. Now, what should be the characteristics? Or in other words, which hypothesis will be considered as an ideal hypothesis for conduction of a research? The characteristic of a good or appropriate hypothesis are: number one, if, as I told you, that a hypothesis should be a prediction. So the hypothesis or the tentative solution recommended by researcher should be able to predict. Number one, it should be very simple. Simple in the sense, once someone is reading the hypothesis, that hypothesis should be self-explanatory, that what is the tentative solution of a problem given by the researcher. It should be clear. It should be clear and concise in the minimum words, and the reader or anyone trying to understand the hypothesis should be clear what is there in that hypothesis, and that hypothesis should be testable. Testable means there should be some mean to collect the data, and there should be some mean to interpret the collected data, and then there should be possibility of establishing and not establishing possibilities of the hypothesis. So the hypothesis finalized for conduction of a research should be testable. And yes, we have not to go beyond. When we were talking about the research problem identification, I told you that whenever you are thinking that you are going beyond the scope of your research problem, it is not appropriate. So even when you are finalizing your research objective, you are finalizing your research hypothesis, you have to keep in your mind, or you should completely be oriented towards your research problem, and your research hypothesis should be specific. When I was explaining the objective, different objective, every objective is a specific objective, and every specific objective should have a specific hypothesis. So your objective, your research problem broken up into the major and minor objectives, and your minor objectives are specific objective, and your each one of specific objective will be addressed by the researcher with a specific hypothesis. Testable already we have discussed, and yes, it is your hypothesis which will help you to bring the knowledge, and there should be consistency. If you will go back to the specific objective, you will see there is a specific consistency among all the sub-objective. First, we are trying to find out the status of mental health of the secondary school students, and once we are aware, the next step or the next flow is to find out the effect of poor mental health on academic performance. We added another variable in it, and then we try to find out the effect of poor mental health on the academic performance. Again, there is a connectivity with the first and the second objective. Next one is we are comparing. Again, there is a flow and connectivity and coherence in that. So that kind of consistency and harmony among your objectives, your hypothesis should be there. Now, from where hypothesis can be generated? Simply, if you ask from me, then it is your research problem and the set of objectives. Means research problem and major objective and set of specific minor objectives will help you to develop your hypothesis. In the last slide, I told you that your hypothesis should be specific. Specific with respect to this particular objective. If you have developed an objective, in respect of that objective, you have to develop a specific hypothesis. So one of the major source how you can develop your hypothesis, study your research problem, study your research major objective, study your minor specific objectives, and then make up your mind. And by picking up all the specific objectives or minor specific objectives one by one, you will develop and create the hypothesis. So this can be one of the major source of development of your hypothesis. If there is similarity in phenomena of present research, by the way, it is not possible for you to develop your hypothesis with the help of already established objectives, then better go for literature review. And while going through the literature review, you will find similar kind of researches where the similar phenomena or similar concept or similar problem has been studied. And for the study of that kind of problem, study of that type of phenomena, how hypotheses have been developed, you can use the same pattern or the same criteria for development. So this can also be one of the source of hypothesis development. Another is observations recorded from earlier studies. While conducting the research, researcher used to record the various kind of observations in the research. These observations can help you in developing. Observations means what they have specifically mentioned, and that mention will help you to decide your presumption, to decide your assumption, to decide the tentative solution of your decided research. And next one is, yes, of course, it is experience from the ongoing studies. When you will start your study, you will go for a very critical and comprehensive literature survey, and that critical and comprehensive literature survey will give you ample experience, and that experience will support you how to develop your hypothesis. And the last one is the existing theories and approaches will also or can also help you in finalizing your hypothesis. Now, what are different type of hypothesis? All are given on your slide. And if I go through the simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, null hypothesis, and associative and causal hypothesis, we will discuss all of them one by one. Another type is hypothesis, research hypothesis, null hypothesis, and testable hypothesis. Research hypothesis means the hypothesis which specifically you want to attain specific outcome as a result of conduction of that research. That can become your research hypothesis. Null hypothesis, when you are not clear what could be the outcome, you are not clear at all, or there are no ample studies already conducted, you cannot make up any mind, or when we were talking, no observations have been recorded. In that situation, we can negate the hypothesis. Negate the hypothesis means we can develop a negative statement. No, this will not be the outcome of study, that hypothesis. And why? Because without hypothesis and objective, no direction can be given to the study. And without direction, if researcher want to conduct the research, then there should be some direction. What should be done? How it should be done? How the research should be conducted? There is need of direction, and that direction can be attained with the help of objective. Objective will tell what is to be done. And hypothesis means what could be the tentative solution. And with the help of these two factors, we can decide. But when we are not aware what could be the tentative solution, in that case, we can negate the hypothesis, or we can declare that no, this is not possible. And third one is testable hypothesis. Testable hypothesis means when appropriate research methodology and statistical techniques are available, and with the help of that we want to test. This is testable hypothesis. Now, what are different type of research hypothesis? Null hypothesis. These are the simple hypothesis. Already I gave the list in the beginning: simple, complex, directional, non-directional, null, and associative and causal hypothesis. Now we will try to understand these one by one. Simple hypothesis means whenever you are trying to find out the relationship or impact of two factors on each other. As I told you, if you want to find out the impact of good quality diet on the health of students, there are two variables. One variable is the independent variable and other one is dependent variable. So that kind of hypothesis, again I want to emphasize that hypothesis is always a prediction. So simple hypothesis predicts the relationship between one independent and one dependent variable. An example for that is a relationship between diet control and weight loss. If you will control the diet, what will happen to the obesity or what will happen to the weight loss? So this is a very simple kind of hypothesis. Next one is complex. When you are conducting a study where you have involved number of independent variables and number of dependent variables, you want to study the impact of fertilizer, insecticides, and soil quality on the yield of production, and yes, of course, its quality also. If you have taken two dependent variable and three independent variable, and you want to develop hypothesis for that, this is a kind of prediction which is very complex. So when the relationship between two or more dependent and independent variables is to be predicted, then that kind of hypothesis is the complex hypothesis. Example, relationship between consumption of balanced diet and exercise. It is not only the balanced diet, it is balanced diet and exercise on the weight loss, as well as now we want to find out the impact on the possibilities of heart disease or proneness of heart disease. We have taken two independent variables, and the independent variables are the balanced diet and exercise, and we want to find out its impact on the weight loss and possibilities or proneness of heart disease. That kind of hypothesis, when the hypothesis will be developed for this type of research, that will be the complex hypothesis. Now the directional hypothesis. The directional hypothesis predicts the intention of the researcher committed to a specific outcome. When researcher has already specified for a particular outcome of the research, in that case it will be known as the directional hypothesis, or in other words, the directional hypothesis predicts the already attained intention of research for the conduction of the research. An example is students of particular academic standard involved in regular exercise. Say we want to study the impact of primary level students who are involved in regular exercise, and we want to study the specific impact on their performance, and this regular exercise is being given for a specific period. That type of prediction given for a research problem or for the objective of the research will be directional hypothesis, because already there is one direction, and direction is, if we see, then academic standards involved in regular exercise for a specific period, and the direction is how they will be impacted on their performance. And the non-directional is when it predicts the situation, there is no theory involved. When there is no theory involved, the researcher is not clear what theory or what approach is involved in that. And the example is when relationship between two variables is predicted without the exact nature of relationship. An example is the sale of ice cream in summer season going high, and in some of the cities the rate of crime in summer season also goes very high. So it is a non-directional kind of relationship. So whenever we try to predict the outcome of this type of research, that will be the non-directional hypothesis. Now, associative and causal hypothesis. Associative hypothesis predicts the impact of deliberate change in the independent variable on the dependent variable. Deliberate change. When researcher has possibility to make a deliberate change. Suppose you want to study the impact of poor mental health on the performance. Here there is no possibility to the researcher to deliberately change the poor mental health. Reason being, it is not possible to put the human beings in the poor mental health. But suppose we want to study the flexibility of plastic with respect to its various ingredients. So if we are changing the ratio of ingredients of plastic, liquid plastic, and we want to see the flexibility. So here there is possibility to the researcher to manipulate. Another example is, again, if we want to study the impact of quantity of diet and weight loss. So here the quantity of diet can be controlled, can deliberately be manipulated, and its impact can be understood. So that kind of association, when predicted for a research problem, is associative hypothesis. And when its cause and effect relationship is predicted, when the researcher is predicting, if we will give small quantity, low calorie, multiple time diet, it will have a positive impact on the weight loss. It is cause and effect. Example, consumption of fats leads to obesity is an example of a symptom. So now null hypothesis already we have discussed. Now what are different functions of hypothesis? The very first function means what role hypothesis can play in conduction of the research. The very first one is hypothesis helps in making an observation and experiments possible. I told you number of times it is not possible to give direction to a research without finalizing the objective and hypothesis of research. Hypothesis will give us the direction of tentative solution, and this can be understood. Let me take again the example of finding the reason for spread of malaria. Dr. Ronald Ross finalized that it is some mosquito which is responsible for spread. If he would have not taken this, then what he had been doing, it was not possible. So what he started doing, he started collecting various kind of mosquitoes, and then he started dissecting and multisecting them to find out the parasite. And lastly, he reached to the conclusion when he dissected one Anopheles female mosquito, he found the parasites in the tummy of that mosquito. And on the basis of that, he declared that my hypothesis that some mosquito is responsible for spread of malaria is established. And without that hypothesis, it was not possible how to conduct the research, how to proceed in the research, how to initiate the research. So it is objective and hypothesis which will help us to initiate the process of research. Second function of hypothesis is it becomes the start point of investigation. So it is hypothesis from where we will start, and with the help of hypothesis, we will finalize the research method, we will finalize the different aspect of research, and yes, even the resources necessary for conduction of research will also be finalized with the help of the hypothesis. Third one is hypothesis helps in verifying the observations. Yes, the testing of hypothesis is the verification of observations. And the next one is directing the inquiries in the right direction. So whatever inquiries are emerging in the conduction of research, only hypothesis can give direction or can give right direction for these inquiries. And the next one is, how will hypothesis help in scientific method? Testing of hypothesis by collection of data, interpretation and analysis of data, that is scientific method. So if a research doesn't have any hypothesis, then it is very difficult, because research can be made scientific by designing it, by deciding the sampling technique, by finalizing the method of data collection, by finalizing the statistical tools and techniques, by finalizing the procedure of conduction of research. All these elements will help us to decide whether research is a scientific research or unscientific research. And lastly, researchers use hypotheses to put down their thoughts directing how experiment would take place, or the hypothesis will help us to finalize the process and procedure of research. Thank you very much.